Hello and welcome to the Building Blocks of Jazz. My name is Phil Dunlap, and today I'm thrilled to have a good friend of mine, Mr. Dave Dickey. He's a musician, educator, band leader, director of bands at St. Charles Community College, adjunct professor of music at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and on top of all of that, he's the leader of the Dave Dickey Big Band and the St. Louis Metropolitan. So Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Phil.
So Dave, why don't we start and talk about the evolution of the trombone and how it evolved from more of a supporting role.
As we know, jazz originally came from New Orleans in the early 1900s. And back then we called tailgate trombone. The trucks would go down the parade and the trombones would be in the back of the truck because they need more slide room. But a lot of the older Dixieland style was mostly a lot of slide work, a lot of greasy, moving the slide quite a bit, just basically. Just stuff like that. All range of the trombone, but mostly mid and low range.
So then it seems as though the trombone kind of changed and transitioned from that supporting role, and then in the late 1940s into more of a soloist and featured role along the likes of people like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah, the trombonist to really get away from the Dixieland style and the tailgate playing was the great J.J. Johnson. He'd play a lot of bebop, blues scale, stuff like that, but playing changes and playing very clean.
Dave, could you demonstrate a bit of that J.J. Johnson bebop style for us?
Sure.
Kind of almost sounds more akin to the saxophone or the trumpet instead of that.
That's the first time, because everybody's using the trumpet or sax playing a lot of fast notes, and that's the first time they really heard the trombone competing with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker.
So if we take a step back from bebop, who are some famous musicians in the big band era?
I always tell my students to go back to where it originally came from, and that's the great Tommy Dorsey. And he used what we call a terminal vibrato. On a trombone, a high F sharp would be a short third position. What I teach my students is to go a half step below and a half step above. The second you play the note, like Tommy Dorsey would, you would use a heavy vibrato.
Can you give us a demonstration, maybe one of his famous tunes like I'm Getting Sentimental Over You?
Yeah.
So I noticed that when you hit a note, you immediately go to that very wide vibrato, which is something that changed later on with someone like Irby Green. So what was unique about Irby Green's vibrato?
Irby would get away from that the second you'd play the note, and you'd hold the note for a while, get a beautiful sound on a straight tone, and then at the end of the note, he'd use a nice vibrato on it. There's one album in particular I highly recommend to all my students and professionals, is the album from 1957 called Let's Face the Music and Dance.
So Dave, what does Irby's style sound like?
I'll do My Romance.
So definitely a very different vibrato concept from someone like Tommy Dorsey.
Yeah.
And another observation that I've noticed is that as the trombone style evolved with the supporting role, there was much more playing in the lower register. When we get later and later into the 1940s and into the 1950s, the range expands, so there's a lot more in the upper register.
Our goal as a trombonist, when playing ballads, is to not sound like a trombonist. Our goal is to sound like a vocalist.
Dave, thank you very much for stopping by and sharing a bit about the trombone with us. Before you go, on top of all the things I mentioned that Dave does, he also has an internet radio station dedicated to the trombone. So why don't you tell us just a bit about that?
Yeah, the website is groovebone.org, and it's Groovebone Radio. It's on 24/7, it's free. It features the trombone and big band music, small group jazz, Latin jazz, and funk and rock. So it's all different eras from late 30s to the present day of all different styles. Go on the website, there's over about 250 videos on there of present and past trombonists on YouTube videos and stuff like that. CD contests, a lot of links, but most importantly, it'll show on the website who the soloist is on each track so the kids can get to know who to listen to.
Great. Well, Dave, thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time on the Building Blocks of Jazz. How about an F blues on the way out?
Sure, sounds good.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.